to this video tutorial on establishment trackers. This video will go through orientation to the tracker, how to add a new starter, managing secondments, changes in role, establish versus in-post versus feels like, and levers. Orientation to the tracker. So if you're starting from a brand new tracker, you will not have all this information on it. You'll get your band and your established whole-time equivalent, but everything else will be blank for you to complete with your specific staff members. So, as I said, if we look at column A, we're looking at the band of our staff. So here we've got band 7, band 6, band 5, and these are by work group. If you have a different establishment for a different work group, then you would need another group. So for example, this could be band 5 RNs, band 6 RNs. If you had band 6 paramedics and they came from a different establishment pot, then you would need another group to be called band 6 paramedics. Column B is our established whole-time equivalent. That's what WTE is. You may also see it as FTE, which is full-time equivalent. They mean the same thing. So one whole-time equivalent equals 37.5
Here
hours.
you can see the calculations we used to come to the figures in front of you. The top one shows you how to work out hours into whole-time equivalent, and the bottom one shows you working out whole-time equivalent into hours. This just really helps figuring out these columns if you're not sure what calculations are meant to be in there. Column C and D is what's actually in post. So column C being your whole-time equivalent, column D being your hours. E to G is your staff member details, so name, assignment number, specific role. Column H is a handy little quick view note keeper. And then column I to T is your financial year. Up here in the corner, you'll see the unit, the month, the financial year, the area, the lead's name, and your site, just in case you need it site specific. Column U is any other notes. This is really handy. It can be really personal to you, help you keep track of your staff, and really help you understand what is going on within your unit. Coming to your rows, if we look at row 20, this tells us how many staff we currently have recruited into these positions. Column 21, coming across from column B again, it is your whole-time establishment figure, your in-post whole-time equivalent figure, your in-post hours figure, and your vacancy figure. And then this is month by month, your in-post and your vacancy. In-post vacancy, in-post vacancy. And that continues down through the different work groups. Managing new starters. If we add a new starter, we just need to go in and add a new line. I personally like to keep mine in alphabetical order. And we go across. So what is our whole-time equivalent going to be for this new starter? One whole-time equivalent equals 37.5 hours, as I've said earlier. I'll just add my own name for ease. And my work group. I'm a new starter. And it's important you keep track of things like when your new starters start. And here you can see levers, but we'll come to them later. The reason it's important to keep track is because we need to know when they started in post. So if I come over here and put, I'm joining in November. So new starter, November 23. So across until November 23, we just add zeros because I'm not there. Got a little bit happy there, I do apologise. And then we put in that I'm a 1 because I'm in post now. So 1, 1, 1. We assume I'm going to stay, so fill it up for the rest of your year, and then when you look at your forwards view, it is accurate. So if we look here, we can see that in April 2022, we had 2.9 whole-time equivalents in post of band 7 only. Remember, it's broken down by work groups. Band 7 only RNs. We had a vacancy gap of 4.86. The reason this figure is different here is because we now have a vacancy here of 2.82. Because when we get to March 23, we have 5.02 whole-time equivalents of band 7 RNs in post. So this is looking at our forecast, our forward view of what our staffing is going to look like within the unit. And this is why these figures change as we come along. And this really forms part of that conversation and evidence base when we are challenged around what is going on within our unit and why it is the way it is. So if we're in July 2022, because I've got to wait for my offer to come through and then I've got to give 3 months notice, I know that this person is going to come in post. Where am I? I'm there in November. So I can say, at the minute, I've got 4.86 vacancies. I'm closing this gap, and in November, I'm going to have 2.06 because of X, Y, Z. This is also an important tool to use with recruitment. We recruit into the future due to the time it takes for notices, references, etc., as all you well know. So if we recruited in August, we know I'm going to start in November, as we've discussed. If we continue to do interviews between August and November, we need to know that this figure's changed, that we had 4.86 when we started this process in August, but due to successful recruitment, we're now at 2.06. Moving forward, where are we going to be at for those posts to fill? So we're going to go back up to 2.82 because we've had another change somewhere along the line. How to complete changes in role. Changes in role are really important to track correctly across your establishment tracker. So I have created Lando Calrissian here, and you can see that he is in our band 5 RN line, and he is going to our band 6 RN line. So a simple copy and paste to make sure that all his details stay correct. And I am just going to highlight these 2 rows so we can easily see what I'm doing. So Lando was a staff nurse when he was in this position, and he successfully interviewed for a band 6 post, and we know because it's internal, it's a smooth transition, so he could start it just after he interviews. So as of September 2022, we will zero him out in our band 5 line, and just keep a handy little note. So promotion to band 6, and we said that was as of September 22. And if we track that up so we make sure we get the correct month, we need to make sure we zero out the backwards view of where he was, and copy and paste our little note so we know that that is why Lando is zeroed up until September 2022, and after 2022 he's a 1 up here but a 0 down here. This makes sure our figures stay correct, but we have historical data if we need to look back and see where our staff members were, or our budget, our whole-time equivalents. If we're asked, we have the evidence base to say this is when that staff member moved. One thing you need to make sure you complete when you've moved your staff member across on the correct month is you need to zero them out on the row they've left behind. So make sure you put a 0 in this column and in there, and that takes them out of the calculator for the whole-time equivalent and the hours in post. So if we go down to the bottom line here, we can see that he's now removed from within these numbers, and that means that your vacancy factor calculation will remain correct.
Understanding secondments. Secondments are another important thing to track through your establishment tracker. Ponda Baba here is a Band 5 critical care staff nurse. If we look here, she is there all year through. But if we look at our Band 6 role, work group, we can see that Ponda Baba is here as a seconded role as a critical care educator. Secondments are the only way you should have people double showing on your establishment trackers within 2 active roles. All other roles you should seamlessly transfer over in the correct month where they finished one role and started another. But as you can see, they started this as of the 1st of May. We know that because of our little note here. As of the 1st of May, we were funded by the Critical Care Network. So we've also got evidence of where we are funding this from, which is helpful if we're looking at changing our establishments or we're meeting with our financial business partners. So we have a 0 in the April, but every other month you can see that Ponda has 2 lines open. Open being recruited into, closed being vacant. This is because secondments are actually cost pressures. We have to keep the position behind the person to recruit that person back into. You may have a divisional conversation about floating that role, but that needs to be approved by your divisional nursing directors or equivalent for whichever division you are within. When I say float the role, what I mean is you may recruit into that role with the knowledge that you are going to open up a line for that person to come back into at some point prior to the end of their secondment. But like I say, that needs to be a divisional conversation. That is not given as green that you can do that. Established versus imposed versus feels like. Sometimes what the figures are telling us is not what it feels like within the unit. And that is what I'm going to explain with the establishment versus impost versus feel like. It's a term I've completely made up, but I think it'll really help you understand what is going on with the numbers and why the reality is not feeling that way. So we know in our Band 5 line, we've got 36.67 whole-time equivalents that were established for. If we look at November 2022, we can see that in post we have 15.78 and a vacancy gap of 20.89. But it doesn't feel like that within the unit. It feels like there's a lot less. We feel like we're putting out for an awful lot more banking agency. And quite frankly, people at the top want to know what's occurring within the unit at floor level. So there's several factors that could be contributing to this, and I'll highlight them as we go along. We have an overseas nurse here. Our overseas nurses have really saved our bacon in the past. We know they have to go through the OSCE programme, and we know that they're paid during that process and also their supernumerary factor after. So if we have a look here, this member of staff has been with us since July 2022. We know they're either still going to be in their OSCE phase if it didn't go to plan, or we know that they're still going to be in their supernumerary phase if their OSCE phase did go to plan. There is a member of staff that isn't technically working within our numbers, so when is not counted, is counted, but isn't felt within that 15.78. We've also got Alexandra here, who's on maternity. Just like secondments with maternity, even if they're not present within the unit, we have to keep their line open. That is another whole-time equivalent that we're not feeling within our hands-on care delivery. We also have 2 more overseas nurses here that we're not feeling the benefit of yet, though of course in time it will come. But this is to help you evidence base why you've got that overspend at present. Why are we putting it out for those shifts? It's because we are backfilling these roles that we have in post. Part of this should be covered by your 22%. And if you want me to go over the 22% at some point, please let me know and I'll fully go through that breakdown of where that sits and what you should be using within that allocation. But in reality, we're putting out extra shifts, we're spending more money because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 whole-time equivalents, which knocks this down to a realistic 11.78 full-time in post hands-on care delivery with an additional 4 whole-time equivalents on top, which are either not present within the unit or in their supernumerary phases. Managing leavers. Baby Frick has decided that critical care is not for them. When they tell us that they're going to be leaving, we can put in leaver here so we can keep track that we know that this person is in a position of going. If we put in the notice period here, it helps us keep track of when that notice came in. So notice August 22. And this person is a band 5, so we know that they will have 8 weeks notice period. So as of October, they will be zeroed out on this line because they're completely leaving the unit. They're not changing location within the unit or changing role. We also need to zero them out once they've left. Up until that point, keep them in post because otherwise our data may mismatch. But we can see that as of October 2022, Babu Frick no longer is within the establishment tracker for critical care. These changes also need to be made on ESR and also on Health Roster. As I stated at the beginning of the video, those two systems do not talk to each other, and that needs to be 2 separate processes to ensure that all the data is kept accurate. If you have any further questions at all, please get in touch in the email address that's on screen now.